Every person, every child, every moment of our life, we are surrounded with trauma. Like, we are surrounded with things that are intended to hurt us. Most of the time, it's not even intended to hurt us at all, but we interpret it like it's some kind of attack on us, right? Like, we're so self-centered and narcissistic that we're like, surely this is happening to me because I'm a victim.
You've been through some major iterations of launches and businesses, and you kick ass at everything you've done. You even did the chunk to hunk 90-day challenge, which took yourself in a total transformation, and you became a badass health and fitness guy. And you weren't that before. Like, tell us a little bit about the journey and catch us up on where Mark is today.
Well, thank you. So to start with, I have to always start with this. I've been married to my high school sweetheart, Jacqueline. We've been together 23 years, married 18 years. And when I was younger, I'd go, my high school sweetheart, and people would go like, "Ah," and I hated that. I was like, don't go "ah" with me. But now we've been together for so long that I'm like, yeah, damn straight. I am so proud of this marriage we have. And
It's
we
an
have
honor.
four amazing kids. My oldest daughter is 16, turning 17. I think there's a song from Sound of Music on that. And my youngest is 9. And oh man, having teenagers, I was so afraid of teenagers from all the movies and everything. And I have the best kids. Like I kind of forgot or didn't realize that, like, if you take a lot of time and effort to have a home life, to have a family, to have values, to have morals, to teach lessons, like, if you do that right, things are a little bit easier later. I
Yeah.
just thought they were going to turn into these, like, like on movies where they're like not connected, they hate you, they turn goth, and they like run out of the house and escape and leave. That's what I thought would happen. So first of all, I'm a family man. Second, I am an entrepreneur. I started when the week my daughter was born. I decided in 2006, I was 23 years old, and I turned to my wife and I was like, I think I'm going to quit my job. And I was the sole breadwinner. We had a household income of 45 grand. And I was like, I am going to quit my job and start this company. And the pitch was, if I make 45 grand working for one company, I can make so much more money if I work for 10 companies. And we can talk about how I almost went bankrupt and how we ran out of money, and then the recession hit in 2008 and 2009. And yeah, it took me like 3 or 4 years to figure that out, that it wasn't that easy. But yeah, I mean, that's a bit about me. And then over the last 16, 17 years, you mentioned all of the projects we've worked on, all of the client work we've done, the cool different experiences we've had. And I've just over the last few years been on this journey of paring back, of trimming back, of realizing that more and more and more and more is kind of cool if you're like addicted to constant change. But at a certain point, you're like, hold on, I'd rather go deeper with less. I'd rather have time to do things really well, and I'd rather be proud of what we're doing than simply just keep this crazy machine fed, keep payroll going, be the one who on the outside looks amazing, but on the inside every single day you hate what you're doing. I'd rather be happier, man.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a big difference between scaling and stacking. And stacking is what a lot of us do, thinking that more is more, and it's obvious, and we'll just make more and we'll do more. And there's a difference between maximizing and scaling. And that's something that I think I also had to come to that conclusion. So I can completely relate to that. And I love the part on the kids, because I think we're both at a similar stage of life. I have a 14 and a 17-year-old. I was talking about this earlier with another person about just there are some. I can't tell you how blessed I feel that my boys are so good, and that they do all the right things. Like the things my wife and I will be talking about, like we're worried about, or they're doing something that we want them to do something different. We kind of step back and we're like, do you remember when we were 17?
Yeah. Yes. You were getting into some stuff, weren't you?
It wasn't this. It wasn't like it wasn't, I got a text from my son the other day. I was like, Dad, trust me, I'm good. Like, I'll be home X at this time. And I was like, I'm good. And Adrian, my wife, was like, she was not good. Like, she was hemming and hawing as she rolled over every 5 seconds. Like, we were having this like moment in parenting. And I was like, look, he asked me to trust him. I got his back. He's got my back. I got his. Until he gives me a reason not to trust him, I'm going to trust him. That's how we build the next chapter of our lives together. And we woke up the next morning and we were both laughing about it. We were like, oh my gosh, how do we do this to our parents? We were way worse. They're way better than us, man.
So I moved out at 16. And I met my wife. She was 16. I was 17. We started dating. And my in-laws were younger than I am today. And my daughter is older than my wife was when we started dating. And so she just started seeing a lovely young man. And we've been having him over, and he's really a great guy. And I always tell my kids, like, I just want you to connect with people who treat you well, who have a kind heart, and are a cheerleader of yours. Like we can figure out the rest, but if they have a kind heart and they're a cheerleader and they treat you well, like, let's start with that. And so Sunday night, she's over at his house, and we say, you have to be home by 10. Like, it's a school night. You have to be home by 10. And so she comes like puffing through the door, right? The door swings open. It's like 10 o'clock on the dot. And she's like, okay, I'm home. And I'm like, okay, cool. You made it. Awesome. And then my wife and I were taking our dog out for a walk late at night because we wanted to take him for a walk because it was cooler before bed. And when we get home, my daughter's not home. like my daughter's not in bed. She's not in her room. And then we look, and my next born, my 15-year-old son, he's not at home. And it's like 10:45. It's almost like 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday. And we're like, where are these guys? So we're shouting outside. We can't, nothing. I go to the garage. My son's bike's still there, which is his main mode of transportation. And I'm like, where are these people? So then my wife's getting ready for bed. And I said, are we supposed to be like angry about this? And my wife's like, yeah, I think we're supposed, like, as parents, I think we're supposed to be angry about this. Like, I don't think we can allow this to happen. And I'm like, right, boundaries. Like, it's our job. Because I wasn't really bothered. I was like, whatever, I'll go to bed. They'll be fine. But my wife and I were like, no, I think it's our job to be angry about this. So I call up my son on the cell phone, and he picks up, and I'm like, get home now. And I'm trying to be like all like angry dad. And he's like, oh okay. Well, we're just, and I was like, get home now. And then I like hung up, and I'm like, okay, cool. I did my job, right? Like, I'm the disciplinarian. I was not that angry, but I was like, we have to set boundaries. And the reason I'm sharing this story is because I realize this is the same with my team. This is the same with like all people in my life. Like, I'm really bad at setting boundaries. So I sometimes ask myself, like, what role do I have to play, whether I believe in it or not, or feel it or not? Maybe it's inauthentic. I'm sorry, but that's how I think. And so he comes through the door, and he comes up, and my daughter is like, I lost my cell phone walking home. And I just wanted to go retrace my steps to find the cell phone. I didn't want to go out alone late at night. She's a young woman. So I asked my brother to come. He was willing to come, and he came with me, and we found it, and we got back. And I'm going like, oh man, like, you had such a good reason.
I played the wrong part at the wrong time.
Yeah, I felt so bad for jumping to conclusions. So then I was like, but then I would still have to be the dad. So I'm like, you should have left a note. And my son's like, I texted you guys. And I was like, and I look at my phone, and he had texted, like, they did every single thing right. And this is always my problem. I jump to conclusions. I think that I'm right. I think that there's a lesson that has to be taught. And so they apologized. They felt terrible. I was like, well, we were worried about you. And then I had to go downstairs, and I had like, my son was really broken up. Like, he was really upset because he felt so bad. And I was like, listen, Jonah, I'm sorry. Like, you are a great brother. You did the right thing. Everything you did was correct. Everything you did was right. I'm sorry I got scared. I'm sorry I overreacted. And so I was like, dang it. I shouldn't be so quick to react to everything all the time. So that's my parenting story of the podcast.
I love it. And I think one of the things that that really happens when you become a parent is you actually understand how imperfect parenting is. And you start to have this exploration of looking back on your own life and all these things that you built up in your mind about your parents and how much bullshit it was.
Yeah.
And
they didn't know what they were doing at all.
It's all bullshit. It's all stuff that it's your version of the story. Now, it doesn't mean that it's completely false. It doesn't mean that there isn't truth inside of it. But, how many times as parents do we just not tell them the whole story because we were doing something to protect them, or we were fixing something, or we were struggling in our own lives to get through something. And, yeah, they're getting a version of us that isn't perfect ever, right? But it's how imperfect parenting is. And what you just described is the ultimate perfect imperfection of parenting story, because you did keep the boundaries. You were worried, but we didn't even go through you didn't even go through your normal checklist of, hey, let me check my phone. Maybe they texted us. Because fear took over.
Yeah, I went
And
straight outside. I'm looking for them. I'm calling them. I'm like, where are they? And then I'm also playing the role of who I think a parent should be. And I think we get caught up. I don't know. I get caught up a lot in that. In like, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I the entrepreneur I should be? Am I the leader I should be? Am I the husband I should be? Am I as happy as I should be? Do I have as many friends as I think I should have? Or am I a good friend? And I tend to live in my head a lot. And so these are the types of questions I'm always asking. And I've kind of learned more to trust that if you take the time to do the hard things, right? If you take the time to do the hard things and have the hard conversations and build up trust and build up relationship and have give and take, then later you can just trust that they will make the right decisions, or the mistakes that are made are more opportunities for them to learn their own hard things the hard way.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think what you're saying is challenging, because most parents see their children as an extension of them, especially the older parents, an older generation of people having children. There's this identity that everything in their life is their children. And the problem with that is your kids can't grow up if you hold them back from actually becoming their own version of a human. We have to actually let them have this exploration. And so it's probably one of the hardest things, and sometimes really, really lonely. I mean, that's I think my wife and I sometimes will sit, and we had this expectation of what it would be like with teenagers, right? And they're a lot different, which is a really positive thing. But in some ways, there is this separation, like this gap that starts to form. And and for us, sometimes we're like, hey, man, I just want them to come downstairs and hang out for a few minutes. Like, I want to watch a movie. Hey, you guys want to watch a movie tonight? So, I know how it feels. And you have a lot of intensity, which is what I love about your personality. And I do too. And I think sometimes I remind my kids and my family that, this intensity is up loud a lot. And I know you have to dial it down sometimes, but you can't get all the good that comes with that intensity, and also, not have some of the reactions occasionally that we then, if we're authentic, you do what you did. You go to Jonah and you apologize and you
Yeah,
say, hey, dude, I'm sorry.
that my friend Evan taught me. Evan Carmichael. Some people may know him. He's a YouTuber. He's been in the entrepreneurial world for a very long time. But a few years ago, I was doing a podcast with him, actually, Something to Prove. And I brought it up on one episode because I think it was either during COVID, or yeah, it was around I think when COVID kicked off. My son was 12, 13. And I really was looking at, gosh, those few years was really a time for reflection. You mentioned in the bio that I burnt out as like this one liner, but that was like a 4-year train wreck. I mean, it was like the burnout was a long time for me to realize I was burned out. And then I had to do the hard work of cleaning everything up. Um, but I was kind of admitting to Evan one time that, like, I am really afraid of the day that my kids realize how imperfect I am, because I can see the the way that they look at what we do, and my wife and I, and kind of the admiration and things like that, the hero, like my your dad can do anything. Especially since my wife and I are both ambitious, we're both achievers, we like we set the bar high and we have high expectations and we work really hard. The thought of him looking at me through the eyes of someone and realizing the truth just petrified me, because I could already anticipate the disappointment. And I was like, Evan, I don't know what to do with this. And he said, this is so easy. Just start being honest with your kids. Start Every time you make a mistake, tell them the mistake that you make and show them the mistake and show them the lessons. And it's funny because when we, as content creators, as CEOs, as leaders, there's been this huge authenticity movement for 10 years. There's been this vulnerability movement, and we're comfortable. You want to talk about the rise and fall of my business. You want to talk about all of this stuff, going from over 2 million in revenue to COVID hits, and then we lose 70% of our revenue in one day, and I have to downsize a team of 24 people. Like, sure, I'll be vulnerable, but going to my kids and telling them that I'm messing up on things, or truthfully answering any question they ask me, as uncomfortable as that might be, like when I had to have an uncomfortable conversation with my son at like 13 or something, and I said, like, hey, my wife and I have sex, kind of thing, and he turned to me and he goes, "You still do that?" What a funny moment. You still do that? Don't pull that social clip, because I don't want him to see me saying that. But
I won't pull that social clip. I won't pull that social, I promise.
But it was I told my wife, I was like, his reaction was, "You still do that?" Like, we've had 4 kids. We're done with that part of our life, right? No, that's not how it works. But like, having these
Procreation only.
conversations. Yeah, exactly. Having these conversations, being open, exploring the mistakes, trying to rough away the shine on me. Man, it was hard. And yet now I can go back to him and say, "I screwed up. I'm sorry." Like, we've established that dialogue. I take the time to tell my kids when I'm proud of them, because I don't feel like I necessarily got that. And so I've spent the last few years really looking at things and going like, what did I want as a kid from my parents? And can I give that to them? Can I go out and play basketball with my son for 30 minutes? Which I did. Now, I'm not amazing. I make tons and tons of mistakes, but let me tell you, like, when you start to establish more of a relationship where I can tell them, like, listen, kid, I'm sorry that I have to get angry with you right now. I do not want to get angry with you. I don't like being angry with you. I don't like having to punish you, but I have to, because that's my job. And we're not friends. I'm your parent. And so, like, being able to have that dialogue, or permission, or whatever you want to say, is so freeing. And I think they're starting to see more of how real we really are. Because here's the other scary thing: they will call BS on you. They just won't speak up about it. Like, you can see it in their eyes. You can see when you're being a hypocrite. You can see when they don't like what you're saying. You can see when they disagree with you. And at a certain point, as they get older, they have their own point of view, and they're right. Like, I am a hypocrite. I am saying one thing one day and then something else another day. I do change the rules on the fly. I do all of those things, mostly because I don't remember what I said.
Yeah. Well, when you have an entrepreneur, connection specialist son, like I did first, they've been calling you out on that stuff forever. So the reality is, and they're actually pretty good at flipping, my wife to seeing another perspective occasionally. And so sometimes I'm like, damn, he's good. He's learning really, really well. And then other times, he's calling it out. I'm like, hey, don't try to shame me for something that this is who we are. This is how I am. I'm not changing this just because you don't think it's right now. I don't care what other people think. I don't care right now what you think. I care about what I know is right for us and our family. There's a lot of conversations we have that are like, hey, lots of people do this stuff. It doesn't mean we do this stuff. You have a name. That's our name. We created this family together, and that name stands for this. Now, you can choose to make that name what you want to make it as you get older, but I want you to have a clear understanding of the lines that we have as very, very important for us in this family. And I have that entrepreneur, like, firstborn, he's nowhere near as challenging as I was at all. In fact, he's a great learner. He's like a great listener. He's figuring out the ways that you get ahead in both school and work. He worked with us. He interned with us this past summer, did a phenomenal job, loved connecting with the clients, like, just a really cool scenario. My second born he definitely listened a lot more. He was, he had what you described as, he would look at me and kind of follow. He still follows like a 40-year-old man's diet, I think. I mean, the guy gets salmon Caesar salads when he goes out with his buddies, and he's an old soul. And he's starting to turn. Now he's 14. So now it's like everything I'm saying is kind of challenged. So we're very open in our family. And I think I spent a long time telling them how we were messing up and when we were messing up, to the point now that sometimes we'll be driving and I'll be like, we were driving to soccer a couple weeks ago, and my oldest son, I was taking him up to a tournament, and he's now 17 and he doesn't forget anything. But I brought back a memory. I was like, remember when you would forget something and then I would lecture you all the way there about how not being prepared is a trait you can't have in life, and you were 8, you know? And I'm laughing at myself for that imperfection. I'm explaining to him in a way where I'm admitting fault. I'm saying, look, I probably overreacted. Like, I mean, I definitely overreacted, but I'm also saying this is imperfection. Like, this is who we are. Like, I'm sorry, but this is funny now to look back. And I'm trying to help find the humor in some of those things that a lot of kids will take and make their version of that story we talked about early and change it into something completely different. Parenting's imperfect. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. You know, a big thing that helped me a lot. Have you had Ben Hardy on the podcast? Benjamin Hardy,
Not yet, but
author.
I know Ben from Genius Network. He's
Yes.
great.
He's amazing. And so most people who are entrepreneurs will know that he's worked with Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach to write a series of books, Who Not How, what's the
10
Who
times
Not
is the
How,
newest.
Gap
10
in the
times.
Game. Yeah, 10 times is easier than 2 times. And I think there's a series of 5 books in total. I'm not quite sure about that, but his other work, which now I love all of that other stuff, the entrepreneur stuff I love, but his other work that's all has to do with you know, Future Self Now is his latest personal book. The book before that, though, Personality is Impermanent. Man, I mean, when I went through that book, I was like, I need to talk to this guy, and I didn't know he was in Genius Network. I didn't know he was connected that way, so I was like, how do I talk to this guy?
Yeah.
But there's this one line in the book, and it's like, it's really small, but it talks about the empathetic witness. Have you heard of this, the empathetic witness?
I don't remember it, so share it with me. I
Yeah.
probably have, but I don't remember it.
So he spoke about the power. He spoke about a time. I think the story was that he was with some of his many kids. The
Yeah,
man
he
has like
has
7
six,
kids,
7 kids, right? Yeah.
but they were out biking and they were going down a hill, and one of his kids went a little too fast and fell. Now, as a father, he can react a few different ways, right? One, why were you so reckless? He could, number 2, he could say, well, there you go. You've learned a lesson, and just be super stern and stoic about it. He could rush forward and comfort them and say, oh my goodness, this is the craziest thing ever, right? But what he was speaking about was the fact that often every person, every child, every moment of our life, we are surrounded with trauma. Like, we are surrounded with things that are intended to hurt us. Most of the time, it's not even intended to hurt us at all, but we interpret it like it's some kind of attack on us,
Yeah.
right? Like, we're so self-centered and narcissistic that we're like, surely this is happening to me because I'm a victim. But he spoke about that as a parent, what everyone really needs is an empathetic witness. They just need someone to listen, to help put it into context and explain what it means or what it means for them. And what they found is, with children with even extreme versions of trauma, if they have someone to talk to who will listen, who will help provide context for it and help them place in their mind what happened and what this means, kind of like therapy, let's say, but even in a non-official way, kids can get over all kinds of things. And when I heard this, I was like, hold on here. Like, there's something here. And I have worked so hard with my wife, my kids, my team, my siblings, my parents, who I've had sometimes rocky relationships with, to just say, like, can I be an empathetic witness? This is hard for men, especially. We want to fix everything. So it's just, can I listen? Can I provide context? And that has been the biggest breakthrough for me with others. But on top of it, I have gone back and asked myself, at what points in my life could I have used an empathetic witness? And rather than blame people for not being there for me, instead just gone back and not necessarily like had a conversation with 7-year-old me or anything like that, but just thought, well, if I had someone, what would they have said? What would they have listened to? What can I provide my own context for these own things now that I'm older? I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but it
No,
has been a
I get it
breakthrough for me.
completely. I get it completely. I think it's a great point. And I also think sometimes you just have to accept things as they are. exactly as they are, not as your version of the story. I recently interviewed Andrew Daniel, who is, I don't know if you've had him, but he phenomenal. Awaken to Your True Self. Really interesting, but he talks about the story everybody tells themselves in and around everything. And so it's like when you see two people whispering and you're the only other person in the room, you assume they're whispering about you.
Oh yeah.
Right. And then you start building this whole story up in your brain. And it's amazing the drama. Like I'm on the soccer fields all the time. Some of the drama between the parents and the playing time and the, like, it's just so annoying. Right. And I just, it is what it is. So like I'll answer it exactly. Someone will say, "Can you believe so and so?" And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, the way he responded when he was put on the field wasn't really the right way, and he needs to basically do
Yeah,
this, and it
objectivity.
is what it
Whoa.
is. Like, it is what it is. So, but I think it's the story we tell ourselves, and there's nobody greater than that than children, right? Because we don't have the whole story. This happens in a company all the time, right? You make a decision in your company, and everybody just reacts to the decision. They don't have any context a lot of times of why it was decided that way, how it was decided that way, what was mandatory, what you could share, what you couldn't share, why you could and couldn't share. You know how many times you share something with someone and you overshare because you trust them, and they say, "If you just tell me this, this will be, I can help." And then you tell them, and exactly what you anticipated was going to
Yeah,
happen
they
blows
melt
up in your
down.
face because they utilize that to hurt you. And be vulnerable, be authentic, help me, let me help you. And then all of a sudden you do it. And what happens? They flip it on you and they say, "Well, you know, because you had to make that hard decision, I don't know what's next. So I have to go find somewhere else to work." Or like there's always something that happens, and it happens. It's that story that we start to tell ourselves, and it changes. But
I was at an event. I was at an event 2 weeks ago, a private mastermind group, and someone brought one of their employees to the event. And the person hosting the event actually owns a majority stake in the business, but is not active in the business at all. So does not know the staff, is not super active with the staff. And so think of it, business owner hosts an event that we all come to. The operator of the company shows up at the event and brings a staff member. The staff member's completely blown away by the quality of the group, the quality of the conversation, the people there, just such a keener, such an amazing spirit. I was so impressed with how she approached everything. And I was like, man, I want more people like that. Cause I think it was the first time she was in a group. You know what it's like when you're in a
yeah,
group of people and you're just lifted up. And so she pulls aside the owner, the silent owner, and just asks if at some point the person could offer up 30 minutes of their time so they could speak. Now, the operator of the company finds out about this and freaks out, just freaks out, because that person naturally assumes that the staff member's trying to go above their head. It's got to be about them. What
right,
mistakes are they making? What could
right,
they be making? What should they be doing different? And I pulled the person aside and I was like, this has nothing to do with you. And they're like, well, what do you mean? It's my company, it's my staff. Why can't they come to me? And I'm like, shut the fuck up and just think for a moment. This has nothing to do with you. If it had something to do with you, I said there would be a court case. You would be getting served legal information. The person wouldn't wait for this opportunity to sidestep. Like you'd be sued if it's what you think it is. You're not getting sued. This person
right.
sees an opportunity to connect with someone great. They've taken the opportunity. And frankly, this hasn't, like, we are so narcissistic sometimes. And it was only evident to me as I'm watching this whole thing play out, where I was like, dude, not everything has to do with you all the time. Get your head out of your ass and just let them connect. And if there is something you can learn from this, it's like, cool, there's a learning opportunity. But chances are what you need to do is stop wasting time and energy on all of these stories, as you're mentioning, that have nothing to do with you.
Yeah, it's the drama gets in the way of progress. And when the drama is it's like stacking stuff on top of your shoulders that you don't need. And it really is something that can get in the way. I mean, it's just not worth it. And in business, the sooner you know how to cut through that stuff, the quicker you cut through it, the better you get to the end result. I had somebody come to me in the last week and they were like, "Hey, there's been a lot going on. I think it's awesome the way that we've been handling it and how you've been handling this." And they were like, "I just wanted to make sure I told you that." And I was like, "Wow, that it was a really nice comment at a really important time." But also, most importantly, it makes you reflect. And what it made me reflect on was simply acknowledging things for how they are, not how I want them to be, not how I hope them to be, not how they could be, just they are. They are this way right now. Control the controllable, not the other way around. You've had some pretty awesome guests on the show, and Dr. Ben Hardy is definitely phenomenal, and the deal he's done with bringing Dan Sullivan's stuff to the world and helping that process has been amazing. And those books are crucial. I mean, Who Not
You know what?
How.
You know what blows my mind? Like Dan, you know Ben probably better than me. We text back and forth. But I'm not part of Genius Network, and so you probably know him even better than I do personally. But what blows my mind is the amount of doubt that he publicly shares and speaks to, but the amount of doubt he has midway writing through something. I talked to him after Gap in the Gain, and he's like, I don't know if I could have done this, and I don't know, and I was doubting. I'm like, dude, like every book you put, like I love his work. I listen to it. I love the podcasts. I buy copies of it. I tell everyone about it. I text him. I don't know if he likes this, but I'm like, hey man, I just listened to this chapter on this story. Wow, like, and I love the fact I can do that. But I don't know how someone who is so gifted, like so clearly gifted at what he does, is so good at what he does. I don't know how he could possibly doubt his ability halfway through anything. And that's actually the most of my conversations on my podcast is about, because it's just like, I know that I doubt myself, and I know that other people look at my skill set and goes, how, like, it's the exact same thing, but he's so good.
Right. He is good. And he does, all I try to do with groups like Genius or anything that we're a part of, these mastermind groups, whatever, is just support everybody. And at the end of the day, when they launch something, I buy the book. I write a review. Anytime you've done something like that, you realize how powerful just one small support mechanism can be for those individuals to continue to invest in them. Because I think ultimately that doubt just comes from when you're starting anything and it's new, it's hard. And it's not, there's not a lot of fulfillment early on. You do hundreds of videos, you put out tons of interviews, you do all these things, and you're starting out with teens of people liking stuff, and then it becomes hundreds, then it becomes thousands, then it becomes 10,000s and over 100,000. But it takes this long-winded process. And Ben wrote that first book, which is a phenomenal book. Personality Isn't Permanent.
His first book was actually
it was not his first book.
Hold on, I have it somewhere back there. I can't find it really quickly. Something about willpower. Willpower.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So Personality Isn't Permanent is the second one.
Yeah.
Willpower. There's something about no will, whatever. We'll put it in the show notes. He talked about how that book, he thought it was going to blow up, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And then Personality Isn't Permanent came out, and it was much better. It was a better launch. Everything happened. You just never know. Half of the videos that people put out, you don't know what's going to resonate with people. But the key is, if you're good at something, this goes back to what you're really good at doing. And that is, your job is to bring out that unique ability, that badass unique ability that somebody has, right? And really plug it and push it and help them figure it out. And I think that's a trait that, we can bring it back to our children. We can add it to the business. Any people that we're working with, the objective is for them to find that. Tell me some of the ways that you help people find that.
Oh, wow. What a great question. Thank you. So, first of all, there's a few things that I know to be true. Businesses focus a lot on needs, right? Oh, I have this new app. I have this new product. I have this new service. I'm doing this new thing. There's a need. here's the truth. Needs go unfulfilled every single day. Like, just the fact that there's a need out there that you spot or see does not mean that anyone knows about it, that anyone cares about it, that anyone wants it, that anyone will pay for it. So we have to understand, like, we're talking about objective truth here. There's a lot of objective truth when it comes to branding, when it comes to marketing, sales, advertising, or what have you. First of all, needs go unfulfilled every single day. That's not enough. Second, no one cares about you, right? Like, they don't want to buy your stuff. They don't want to watch your advertising. They don't want to take the time to learn about you. They don't care what you do. Let's go back to Simon Sinek, start with why. They don't care why you do what you do. They don't care how you do it, and they don't care what you do, unless if it's obvious to them that it will help them take them closer to the results they want or the goals that they have. Or you can do a really good job of tying in what you do to the results that they want or the goals that they have. And so just with those few truths, that's how we approach what we do. And so as a brand strategy company, as a branding company, we help in a few key ways. First, we help people who typically are total badasses. Like, they have amazing products, they have amazing services, they do amazing things, and yet they are not, they're uncomfortable being as bold as you need to be. They're uncomfortable sharing as much as you need to share to stand out. They don't make big claims. They're just so wishy-washy with everything that all we have to do is just find out who they really are, what they really care about, what their values really are, what their personality really is, what their voice is, what hot takes do you have? What are you willing to die for? What are you fighting for? Who is the enemy? Like, let's answer some of these questions and then share that stuff. Like say it. Yes, be willing as a business even to potentially offend some people. May be willing to actually stand for something. And once we figure out your real advantage, because it's there, anyone who is running a business that people are willing to pay you for, you have an advantage. And so once we know your advantage, we can help figure out your VIP customers, like the people who you should be in front of. Where are they? What do they care about? And once we know that, hey, we don't have to compete against everyone on every platform, for every channel, for everything. Like, if you know exactly what you want and you know exactly who you want to get in front of, it just narrows everything down. And suddenly your competition are like a few people, or more likely it's status quo, or more likely it's fear or something else. And then it's like, just connect the dots. What do I want to accomplish? What do people want to hear? What's different than the competition? And you can create a pretty cool brand that way. I mean, that's it.
That's awesome. Yeah. You know what? I think sometimes just having the level of energy that you bring to the table and the expertise, when you take energy and expert wisdom and you approach it, sometimes people just need a shot of adrenaline. They just need a reminder and some energy behind the movement that they've been doing. They just need someone like on the back of the bike where they know they can ride the bike. You've seen them ride the bike, but dad's behind them pushing them, and they just take off. And they're like, wow, I'm doing this on my own. And they are, but they just needed that little push. And it sounds like what you're finding is that niche for them that helps them stand out just a little bit better than everything they've been doing to this point. And it helps.
There's that. And then there's also like cutting stuff back. So it's so weird. We do two things. Like, if you boil everything we do down, it's like cut all the crap away. So prune everything back to just the things that matter most, and then figure out the most energetic, exciting, whatever it is. Like, figure out the way that you want to take those few things that we've pared back and amplify it. Because that's the other thing. It's like, it's so weird. As businesses, we provide all of this extra information that doesn't matter. We don't provide the context that buyers need to make smart decisions. And so it's like we have too much of some things, we're missing other things. And then all in all, we're unwilling to be bold or make a claim or like put something on the line. And if you're not willing to put something on the line, why would anyone buy into you? And so I love the process, and I love what we do. And naturally, this leads to, it leads to marketing messaging, being really strategic in advertising messaging and sales messaging, recruitment, engagement to avoid churn on recurring revenue and brand. And like we take all this stuff and we make it work for you. And it's all in the effort of growing sales. But it's sometimes you just need that outside perspective to help you filter through things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it probably helps with a lot of the conversations you have on the podcast as well, because you're really trying to extract that greatness from the individual of which you're interviewing, which is natural for you. It's natural for someone that's doing it. Do you have, what are some of the interviews that you've done that stand out? Are there any that I know there are plenty, but I mean, by me asking the question and elongating it, I'm giving you more time to come up with an answer. So this is a strategy.
Thank you, host. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So for the listeners out there, I mean, the objective is, first of all, anytime someone comes on our show, our goal is to elevate them in some capacity. I want people to listen to you. I want people to read your stuff. I want people to know who you are and hire you. I want more people to know who you are, because the more we're helping each other out, get out there to the world, the better, more positive, bigger the messaging is going to be to help people. And one person that's helped from this stuff is valuable. So when you think back on some of your podcast, what are some things that stand out for the listeners so that they can go check out something?
Well, I have to go back. There's a few, but I have to go back to the very first episode we ever released. It wasn't the first interview I did. Now, my podcast is my third podcast, and so I've been doing this for a while. But I was watching the Eco Challenge on Amazon. I don't know if you ever watched that or not, but I watched it way back in the day. And Mark Burnett, the producer of Survivor and The Apprentice and a bunch of shows, he wanted to, back in the 90s, I think, create the world's toughest long distance challenge. And so he put these teams together. I remember watching it again in the late 90s. And there were these teams of like 4 people on each team, and they had to go 600 miles, I think, across all of these different terrains. And it was just whoever can get to the finish line first wins. So there are teams who sleep. There are teams who don't sleep. There are teams who are stronger in some things or weaker in others. They're like, and they would go like 5 days straight without sleep just to try and win. And there's all these different strategies. So
right.
So a few years ago, they redid the Eco Challenge on Amazon Prime, and I'm watching this. And there's this woman. There's this woman on Iron Cowboy's team. I had him on the podcast afterwards. I don't know if you know James. Iron Cowboy.
Okay, I don't know.
But anyway,
but it's okay. We can look him up.
No worries. He did something like 101 Ironmans over 101 days. Like, this guy isn't badass. But there was a woman on his team, Sonia Wick. And I reached out to our mutual friend, Bo, and I said, I would love to talk to her. Like, I watched her and I loved her story. And he wrote back and he's like, okay, she's booked. And I was like, wait, like I get to talk, I get to speak with her, I get to connect with her. And what an amazing woman. A woman who in her 20s didn't know how to swim, was out of shape, had never done anything before, and signed up for like a 5K stroller walk with her daughter. And then started doing 5Ks, and then started doing 10Ks, and started doing half marathons, and then thought maybe she'll do a triathlon, but couldn't swim and had to learn how to swim as an adult. Anyway, she worked her way up through the Ironman. She ended up competing in Kona. She came in second place, I think, in Kona in her age group. Went and did this amazing challenge, and we just had such a great conversation. But it's so special to me, not only because of her story and what she brought to it, but because it helped teach me a really valuable lesson, which is a lot of times I look at others who have platforms, who have groups, who have companies, who have teams, who have families, whatever it is. I look at the person who seems to have the thing, and they're like the leader of it or the center of it. And I realized that the only difference between the person sitting in the like Genius Network, the only difference between you and Joe is that Joe started it, right? And he stayed committed to it. And he wanted to grow it. If you wanted to do that, you could do that too. Your own community, your own tribe. So right. By me going like, oh man, a podcast, connecting with, like I reached out to someone. I said, hey, do you think you can connect with them? And they did. And then she showed up, and I was like, what?
I did it. Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's just that easy. It's that easy for anyone listening who has this idea of the mastermind or the network or the group or the mentor that you want, that you're unsure if you can get. I've always had mentors, and each step, all I've done is reached out to them and said, hey, like, do you mind if every now and again I ask you a few questions? Me texting Ben, Dr. Ben Hardy was like me, like going, he gave me his number and I said, can I ask you some questions once in a while? I'm showing respect. And so that was huge for me. I can go through more and more and more,
No,
but
that dude,
that first one mattered.
that's an awesome example. And I think what it also does is it shows how easy it is to have a conversation. I think it reminds me of when I was, 5 or 6 years in business. I read a book, and it was a book about our business. And it was like mind boggling to me how in line with me and the way I wanted to run my business, this book was, right. And so, unlike most people, I didn't just read the book and then try to execute a couple things. I found the person that wrote it. I hunted them down. I talked to them. I hired them as a coach who worked with me for 5 years. We built all kinds of good shit together. I mean, literally, it's somebody that I can call at any point in time in my life today. And I know that he's got good ideas and we connect. It's a business and friendship at the same time. But just the point that I'm making is so many people don't take the steps to just act upon opportunities to connect with someone that they might be interested in talking to, or understanding where they're coming from or why they did what they did.
Yeah. I had Rand Fishkin, an entrepreneur who built Moz. If anyone's in internet marketing, you certainly know Moz. You know Rand because he's quite famous. But he built it up. He wrote a great book called Lost and Founder, talking about the challenges with the VC model and being a CEO in Silicon Valley and growth at all costs. And I'm reading this book and I'm like, this guy is just amazing. And I've respected him for so long. So again, we got him on the podcast. Loved the conversation. We've emailed back and forth. I want to pour into anything he's doing. And a few months ago, I'm a customer of his new company, and we use his new company, their tool, for our market research. And I could not figure out how to get something to work. And I thought I saw a bit of a problem with the tool. I thought it skewed too heavily one way. I wanted to find these other information. Like basically, I wanted to find out. I wanted to find CEOs who listen, who like watch Fox News.
Okay.
Like Midwest Fox News conservative CEOs, business owners. And a lot of their data tends to pull from Twitter, which tends to be bi-coastal, more liberal, progressive. And so I saw this hole in the data source. I emailed him. 2.5 minutes later, he emailed me back. And I stopped for a moment. I didn't even read the email, but I stopped for a moment and went, how the hell can I own an agency, but what kind of benefit is it that for me to do a better job for my clients, I could go to the founder of the software company to ask him a question, and in 2.5 minutes later, he gave me a very thoughtful and detailed response. And I was like, I said to my COO, I'm like, people can't pay for this, right? Like you can't pay for this, but it comes from, it's not, the podcast isn't a tactic to get this. This is like 2.5 years later, 140 episodes later, I'm just starting to realize that it's a benefit. It's like this magical little thing where I was like, damn, when people say that your network is your net worth, it's true. You can't do anything alone. You have to rely on other people. And if you're willing to give and other people are willing to give, you're all going to get better along the way.
Yeah. And I think a key part to that as well is you're building depth, not width. Everybody can know someone, but and have met someone. Not everybody builds a level of depth with them that actually creates, context for the future, that creates roots where they stand out. I think the other thing that you realize in leadership is it can be quite lonely at times. And so I think that the CEO is often somebody that people don't approach enough. And so there's this island mentality where when someone does ask a question, they're like, oh, we could solve this. I'm so excited about solving this problem. I mean, it's almost like it brings you back to the roots. So you're building depth, not just width, by connecting with people on a deeper level. And I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how we You know what it is? It's I try to take the guests very, very seriously. And I have found that when I'm already a fan of the person, know their work, or have been watching them for a while, the conversations are just like they're so amazing, so easy. Um, you asked about past guests. One of the ones I was most excited about was a man named Charlie Borman. Now, Charlie he was an actor. He's the son of John Borman, who's a famous British director who did like Excalibur and a whole bunch of movies. Like he was a pretty big director. And so when Charlie was a young boy with his siblings, his dad, who was shooting all over the world, would just fly his children out. He was in what's that Clint Eastwood movie that like is like the most famous maybe it's Dirty Harry. I don't know.
Dirty Harry. That's probably the most famous.
There's some movie that Clint Eastwood was in, I think,
I think Clint's 100 years old at this point in time. The most famous is probably hard to find. He is and still doing movies, and such a badass, by the way. But anyway,
I had Charlie Borman on because I've been a huge fan of his since 2006. Now, you may not know the name Charlie Borman, but you probably know his really good friend Ewan McGregor, the actor who was in Moulin Rouge and is I think he certainly is a Golden Globe winner. He was in Star Wars and he's been in tons and tons of stuff. They rode their motorcycles around the world together. And so back in like 2005, they had this crazy idea to ride their motorcycles around the world. They would videotape the whole thing on little cameras, and it got turned into a TV show called The Long Way Round. And then it became like really popular. And then they did The Long Way Down, and then they did The Long Way Up, and they've done all of these cool things together. Now, I wanted to talk to Charlie because I was like, what I knew as I learned more about Charlie and I was a fan of was that his acting career did not go the same direction as Ewan McGregor. Right? like his acting career was not going the way that he wanted. He was actually a house painter and a decorator, like a kind of a contractor and house painter, because he needed to pay the mortgage. And Ewan, who was doing like Star Wars and Moulin Rouge and all these big things and making big money, was like, hey bud, let's ride some motorbikes around the world together. And Charlie was like, I would love to, but I don't know how to take 3 or 4 or 5 months off of work. I don't know how to pay for any of this stuff. So they did the TV show simply to help cover Charlie's costs because he was a house painter at the time. And I asked him, like, hey, like, did you feel like you were giving up on your dreams of being an actor and all of this stuff? And he's like, well, like I still got to be creative, and it was still like a good living, and it's honest, and there's nothing wrong with it, of course. But by doing this trip around the world and it turning into a TV show, now Charlie spent the last 15 years being a sponsored rider for all kinds of different motorcycle companies like Triumph and others. He gets to do these trips, these expeditions around the world where people will pay to ride with him, and he gets to just lead these tours. He's done more TV shows, like all kinds of cool TV shows. He's ridden in the Dakar Rally. Like there's this weird turning point where just this one thing that they did for passion suddenly became a career that I have loved to watch. And so when I had him on, I was like, I've been a fan for 15 years. I've been like, okay, I have so many questions.
You were geeking out.
I was geeking out. And so, that's the number one thing I will say is if anyone wants to do what you're doing or do what I'm doing, or just even make their network better, I would say like find out what you are a fan of with the person you want to connect with, and then just be willing to show them and share with them that you're a fan, and like Rand stays in touch with me because he knows I read Lost and Founder and I loved his book and it meant so much to me. So, when I met Marie Forleo for the first time at an event, I kind of said, I'm so sorry. Like, we were working together at Ed Milet's thing and this and that. And I was like, I don't know if this is appropriate because we're working together. I said, I'm sorry, but I just have to tell you, like, your book, Everything is Figure Outable, was the first personal development book I ever read. I remember reading it. I remember walking through it. I remember hearing it, and it changed my life. And so I just wanted to thank you for writing this book. And again, I don't know if I'm breaking rules by saying this. And she was like, she gave me a hug. She's like, oh, you can never tell someone enough that you're a fan. And it's like, I can't just email Marie, but I do know through the grapevine that like that me having the boldness to share that with her impacted her so much that she shared that with other people to talk about how you never know, as to your point, you never know who you're helping or how it's going to help. But I just try to lead with why I'm a really big fan or impressed with a person.
Yeah, it's using the power of connection to bring the conversations, to bring the stories to other people that may not know who they are is beautiful. What I love about the Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman reference is I love it when people bring their friends alongside them. See, to me, there's no better way to have success in this world than to do so with the people you love the most. I mean, I tell my brother all the time, I'm like, hey, if you come up with something that you think would be good, let me know. We can maybe do something together. Like, I'm not going to go do it. I'm going to see what he's interested in and we'll build it together. But like I'm so excited to do things with the people that I love the most that, I could absolutely see myself. I want to, there's things I want to do. I want to do some long walks and I want to do some super cool things that are going to take a lot of time that I don't have the time to do right now, but I'm going to want some people to do it with me. And not all the people that I'm going to want to do with me are going to be able to do those things. So the key is finding a way to add success to Borman's life by just paying, by creating something. He didn't just say, I'll pay for you. They actually created something that paid for it, and it gave him a career, a lifetime of opportunity. I love that part of the story.
And you know what? It's funny because I've never even thought of like I don't think I even asked him like, hey, why didn't Ewan just pay for you? Right? Like what could it have really cost? And it just never came up, right? Like it just I don't know.
He
I
probably
guess
just
that
wouldn't let him. I mean, truthfully, good friends. This is the thing. It's sort of like going to Maria Forleo. If you go to her and you tell her that, right? She's humbled because she's still real. The people that aren't humbled aren't real anymore. And guess what happens? The more successful people know this, the more successful that people are, sometimes people start to take advantage of them. And so the sheer fact that someone says, hey, dude, I want you to come motorcycle with me across the country. And your exact immediate response is, yeah, if you pay for me, like, I
oh
don't want you to
oof.
come with me anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
Now what you're saying is like you're right.
yeah, that's one of the things that I think happens. And, there are two ways to be. I love the leaders that we surround ourselves with. I love the thought leaders, the doers, the people that continue to become more humble, more grounded, more in center of who they are, not less, not caught up in the fame and the money and the emptiness, but caught up in the humans around us. We talk about the who, the what, the why, and the how.
So
And
who do you
and
think's doing this really well right now? Like who do
oh,
you know is just like you were so impressed with how humble, how real and humble they really were?
man, that's a great question. I'm always impressed with Joe Polish and the Genius Network. I mean, it's an easy answer, but I'm always impressed. I've been in that group since 2018. There's a lot of people that rotate that go in and out, but the people that stay are the people that tend to be the givers, the ones that want to just keep giving. And I think that the reality of sharing truth and your story and your fumbles and your successes, like that dude knows everybody. I mean, Evan and him are traveling around and Joe's just busting on Evan and the two of them like make a better team, and individually they're already unbelievable badass humans, right? So I tend to see a lot of those individuals in that group that stand out. And I mean, I could look behind me from some of the interviews that I've done. Steve Sims was a hell of an interview, and
So,
he's
okay.
he's
Steve Sims
only
is one of my favorite people on earth. He's ridiculous.
he's so cool, and he's still doing stuff to help other people. His entire life is about giving other people experiences they've always dreamed of having or
If
never
if you're
dreamed of
if you're
having.
listening to this and you don't know Steve Sims, go get the book Blue Fishing. What an amazing book. I've gifted that to people actually because it's just like a message that we all need.
You know what's funny? I think it's good to go read people's first books. And you know why? Because you're very vulnerable when you write your first book. It's got probably more in it than you would ever share again. I've actually done some interviews on the podcast where I reference the old book and someone's like, wow, I haven't even thought about that book. And you could tell like they're almost like, ooh, I don't know what he read in that thing. Like I have a new version of myself that I'd rather be talking about. And
You know
but
what I do? I go to their Instagram and I just keep
all
scrolling
the way
until
down.
all the way down, all the way down. I go to their podcast, I scroll all the way down, and I want to listen to the first episode, and I want to be like, so, your first episode, do you remember what you talked about? And they're like, no, I don't know, whatever. That was 1,200 episodes ago, and I was like, yeah, you talked about this. Let's talk about the difference now.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is a great conversation in the sense that we are not who we were, right? And we talked about this a little earlier. I want to be judged by who who I want to be, who I'm striving to be, not who I
Oh,
was, right?
ooh,
Intent is something that we all have in our brain of kind of the version. But I guess what I'm saying is who I was at interview one is not the same version, because I've had the ability now to interview X number of guests that have given me different perspectives, and I'm willing to change, alter, adjust, grow. I think that's a problem in society today, is that people aren't willing to admit when they're wrong. It goes back to our conversation with the kids. Like, life is just like that. If you have an ideal or an idea that you fundamentally believe in most of your life, and then all of a sudden something changes, it's okay to change. It's okay to adjust. But I think so often people look back on that, and you could pull a video I did from 5 years ago, and that is still who I am. That is still the probably a very similar belief, but it's been altered or adjusted or changed, or I'm intrigued in a different way, or I've grown, and I love that growth. I love that journey. So
you just reminded me. I'm working through the book Awaken Your Genius. I think it's called Awaken Your Genius. And there was this line
who
that
wrote it?
hold on a second.
And by the way, for everyone listening, when you're reading constantly and when you're doing podcasts, if you're doing a couple podcasts a week, you're reading someone else's book constantly. And so they all
Blend together.
oh man, I got 3 books on my desk right now for next guests. And I'm like, okay, I'm going through them. And someone's like, well, what are you reading right now? I'm like, well, like 27 things. I've gotten through
I
all of them. They're amazing, but
I go through a lot of stuff. So Awaken Your Genius, Escape Conformity, Ignite Creativity, and Become Extraordinary by Ozan Varol.
okay.
And so it's what was so interesting to me, and was that what was so interesting to me was that he said that instead of stating your beliefs, this is what I believe, and we get caught up in saying like, this is what I believe this, because it's so static. He suggests, this is how I currently understand the issue. Now that language, like I wrote it down, but I would
I
struggle
can't
with
see either of us using that
no,
that
this is how I
wording.
currently
This is how I
understand the issue.
currently understand the issue. That's like
But
the guy for the guy that
but
wears black shoes only and the same pair of khakis every day. And
well, listen, it was written by a lawyer. Like the book
I
was
just
written by
described a lawyer.
yeah,
No, just kidding.
he was a lawyer, he was a rocket scientist, and then he quit
Yes.
both of those things to become an author and a writer. But the essence is true. Instead of saying like I believe these things, it's like just this is how I currently see things. This is how I see things right now. Like pick your
Yeah.
own words, but the author suggests that by being more loose with our story, with our beliefs, with our perceptions, by holding things looser, we will be more likely to be comfortable with the fact that things change and we learn things, and we will. My team used to always get upset with me when I'd go like, "We're going left," and then I'm like, "Oh, we're going right now," and they're like,
Yeah.
"But Mark, you said we were going left. Left is a good plan." I was like, "Yeah, but I've learned things since I like." The version of me who said we should go left was an idiot. I now know new things and we should go right. And then a bunch of months later, it's going to be like, well, hold on, guys. I've learned even more. Let's keep fixing things. And
Right.
I actually stopped. There were years where I wouldn't tell my team to change things. And I would live with broken parts of a company or culture or what have you, because every time I would say left and then right, I felt like a hypocrite. Every time I learned something new, I felt like I was just addicted to change. And everyone made me feel in the company like, oh, there's Mark again trying to fix what isn't broken. And I realized like, no, like I'm allowed to learn new things, and so are you. And we're allowed to change our opinions, and we're allowed to Like, politicians for some reason can't quote unquote flip flop, but all of the rest of us, we better flip flop. Like, if you think something is really good and you find out it's not good, change.
I used to appreciate it when politicians did flip flop a little bit, like when you put shit out there and then you agree with it just because your political party says you have to. That's the problem that we're running into nowadays, that nobody thinks for themselves. My dad used to say never. And so when you stick your stake in the ground and you say, this is what I believe only, like you're really, I'm also not afraid to say what I believe right now. And I think that's also something that we could do more of. Now, it's okay that it's only right now, and it's okay that I want to learn why you might disagree and how you might change my opinion. One of my best friends and I have disagreed on on policy and politics forever. And we're not going to go into that conversation today because we don't have time. We're literally wrapping up. But at the same time, I have had some of the best conversations of my life with this individual because we both respect each other. We both care about each other's opinions. I empathize. I understand where he's coming from. I don't agree with the how. Like oftentimes it's just the how that I disagree with. So if I can get behind all the other parts, we can come to conclusions. And I love that. And I think what you're stating is a great, yes, the way he said it is not the way we would say it, but at the same time, it's still the right thing. This is what I know now. This is how I understand it today. But that could change. And I like that. That's why we have to talk more than once a year, because we have a better rapport. I mean, we might have to have some Counting Crows and Ben Folds in the background. And
There you go. There you go. It's funny when you mentioned we're wrapping up, part of me was like, "Aw, like I want to keep hanging out with my friend."
I know. We'll do more of these. I mean, the bottom line is there's no rules. That's the beautiful thing about podcasts. Is I did one the other day, and I had honestly not read the book because I started to read the book and it was so deep and I needed to digest it. I liked it so much that I was like, I need to actually put time into this. I don't want to skim this. I want to actually break it down.
Can I admit something for you that I've never said publicly?
Yeah.
When we started the podcast, I would say for the first 60 or 70 episodes, I read every single book because to me it's like my duty, and it's respectful. Someone put the time and the craft into it. And then I've stopped because what I found was I fell in love with their work, and I just kind of wanted to talk about the book.
The work. Yeah.
Because it's like or I questioned about the work, like every conversation just became about the work as opposed to me doing a good job of extracting what it means or how, and so I realized it's like, oh, and it's tough for me because I feel like I don't mention it to a lot of people that I have on. Like, I've never really read it. Instead, I do all kinds of little tricks to learn enough about it, to be very, very good and dangerous, but not so much that I feel like, well, I have no more questions for you because I already read everything. Like, I've already gone through your stuff. No more questions.
It takes away the curiosity. The point that I was getting at is I got to the point where the interview went so well, the conversation was so flowing. Like I didn't have enough time. We needed more time. So I said, listen, I got to admit something. I started to read your book and I was blown away at the depth of the book. And I quite frankly wanted to digest it, not just read it for the podcast. And there are two different ways that I have to read. Like I can't do that and give it what it deserves. And so we were like, okay, so we'll do this again after you read the book. And this time we'll talk a little deeper on the book. And so we got to.
Okay. What was the book now? You have to tell me.
Awaken to Your True Self by Andrew Daniel. So, and if I said it wrong, the show notes will state the right thing, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And it's currently in my Audible. You mentioned it
a little bit earlier. Yeah,
I did. I just really, it was a different take on the self, awaken to your true self. That's correct. It was a different take on why you're still stuck and how to break through. And what was really unique is we spent the whole time talking about, his life and how he got there. And the truth was that curiosity created even more curiosity. And when someone listens to that interview, when it comes out, it's going to be really powerful. And the truth is the depth of some of these, like we're getting to meet some really unbelievable, I'll use your words, badass humans. And getting to know them and having more deeper conversations, a deeper reflection. It's not just something that happens in the conversation. It's not just something that people are listening to right now. It's actually something we think about for a long time after. It's part of our growth trajectory. It's part of our network. It's part of our, you know, makeup. We're getting to become friends with some of these people, and it's becoming our circle. And that's the pretty unique thing, is that you're expanding upon the circle when you're having these conversations. And I mean, that's why there's never enough time for us, Mark. That's the bottom line. There's not going to be enough time. But we do need to talk 90s music sometime, because that would be cool. And I have a friend that we could bring on. What are you listening to right now? Like what is your go-to music wise? Where have you I have friends that never leave. Like they stay in whatever they listen to in high school and college, and they never ever grow. I have friends that that can do it all. Some that only like one genre today, and then they're like one genre tomorrow. Where do you fall?
I tend to listen to the same thing on repeat for about a week, and then I move on to something else. And right now, I'm listening to a lot of Cat Stevens. So,
Oh, wow. You're
I mean,
getting
I'm a huge
sentimental
fan
on
of.
us.
Well, no, not necessarily, but I'm a huge
That-
fan of 60s music, 60s music history, some 70s singer-songwriter stuff. 80s, I pretty much skip. I was a kid in the 80s, so like I don't know, man. 90s I'm good with again, but a lot of Cat Stevens, and then a lot of like workout playlists, because I work out a lot. My wife always reminds me nowadays that she's like, oh, you smell like sweat. And I was like, I just showered yesterday. And she's like, yeah, but you've like worked out 3 times since then. I'm like, ah. So a lot of workout playlists, but a lot of Cat Stevens right now.
That's cool. That's awesome. I definitely like how music can transcend a generation. How we can go back. I have an album I listen to all the time with Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington, and it's super interesting because I can listen to it in the background. I can work. I have the album. It's something that I really enjoy. And it's old, but it's new to me. And every time I hear something different, and so and then I also I could I grow with the times. So I'm somebody that, like, if something new comes out and I discover that artist, I go down the path of just listening to that artist and understanding everything they've done and who else is like them, who else I might like. Like, it's another curious thing to
Ah,
me.
that's weird. I don't listen to a lot of new music. Like I'll find stuff that quote unquote's new for me, and my wife will be like, "Yeah, the song's been out for like 7 years," and I'm like, "Really? Okay." Like it's, but I when it comes to TV, when it comes to movies, when it comes to music, I'm kind of the guy where it's like, if it doesn't rise to the top, like if I don't allow everyone else to curate for me what's quote unquote good or bad, it
Yeah.
means I listen to like a lot of top 40, but I'm going to give something like 10 years before I even think it's good.
Oh,
Um, like I'm not going to watch, I will not watch season 1 of any show if I don't know there's going to be a season 2, 3, or 4. Because it makes no sense for me to invest time into it. So if someone like has a hit song, but it's not a hit album, or if it's a hit song, but not a few albums, I'm not going to invest a lot of time in getting to know them. So, but
it's a good mantra. Have you gotten into Ted Lasso?
see, I've read a lot of articles on it, but no, I haven't. I haven't seen a single episode. I know that stuff's happening. Succession, even one of my favorite
Oh,
shows.
yeah.
I waited until basically season. I haven't watched season 4 yet. I've been ignoring everything because I want to watch it in a single run. But I
Okay.
didn't even watch seasons 1, 2, or 3 until like a week before season 4 came out. Even though everyone I know is like, it's like, I'm like, no, I'm gonna wait until I know that it's actually like good enough.
I've only seen one episode of that on a plane, and
Oh,
I
it's a
liked
good
it, and
show,
I
man.
said
It's
I
a
have
good
to watch
show.
it. I just don't watch a lot. And so I do, because Ted Lasso is soccer and I love soccer.
I
It
didn't even
was
know it was soccer.
Oh
What is
man.
Ted Lasso about? It's a
I
comedy, right?
it is, and it's the best show that I've watched in years. It's got everything. It's got a little
Really?
bit of drama. It's got the perfect amount of comedy. It's a little corny. It has a little bit of soccer. It's, an American football coach goes over to England to coach one of their Premier League teams. And the wife who now owns the team because the husband cheated on her and blew it up, and now she inherited the team that was his boyhood team. She's going to blow up the team, so she hires a horrible American real football coach, not a soccer football coach.
Oh, he's like an NFL.
Like he's like a college football coach. Yeah.
Okay,
And,
so see, now I'm reacting like, what a funny premise for the
Yeah.
show that has been out forever. This is what I'm talking about. This is where my wife's like, Mark, this has been. I'll be like, have you heard of this thing? And she's like, yeah, like everyone knows.
But every show like I get disappointed in plot lines because I can see where things are going, or I'm again, being intuitive and relationship driven. Sometimes you're over evaluating and you're like, oh, this guy's gonna die, or this situation's happening here. Ted Lasso is one of those shows that like everything you want to happen happens. And that is a really good plug for a show.
It's satisfying, isn't it?
It's like Ross and Rachel getting together earlier in Friends than them waiting forever to only blow it up.
Yeah. It's basically, I mean, that sounds amazing. I love stuff where it's like really satisfying. You know, there was like this. Yeah. Anyway, we all like a happy ending. Like, give me more happy endings.
If you like happy endings, that's an understatement. If you like happy endings in shows, this is the show to watch. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll enjoy it, and you can watch it with your older children, not younger children. It's definitely adult. But for a teenager, it's nothing more than they've probably seen already. So
I will give it a viewing as soon as enough episodes are out that I don't have to wait for anything.
3 seasons now, and third season just ended. I'm not sure if it ended or not. Again, this is how in tune I am. I don't even know if it was the season finale or the finale. I am so clueless. But look, we could talk about anything, and that's what I love about having you on this show. If you haven't listened to Mark's podcast, if you're not following on social media, if you're not on his YouTube channel, which I'm going to ask you now to tell everybody where to find you. But if you're not listening to you, then you're missing out.
Well, I think you just have to question your life choices.
Life choices, yes.
Yeah.
That's it.
If you want to connect with me, head over to YouTube. My channel is at Mark Drager. The best place to connect with me one-on-one would be Instagram. My handle is at mark.drager. Send me a DM. It's me. I have no bots. I have no funnels. I have no VAs. Like, it's literally just me, which is why I have such I'll say a tight community of followers. That's code word for a small community of followers. And if you want to listen to the podcast, you can find it on any of your podcast networks. We just went through a bit of a rebrand, so you might look up under my name, Mark Drager, or We Do Hard Things, or The Mark Drager Show. All the same thing. We just changed the name.
And it's a great show. And our interview was a great interview. It's only middle of the pack. I ranked it to see where it ranked, and I'm a little disappointed in myself. Only about 9,000 viewers have watched it on YouTube, and there's a lot of better ones. So
you know why? You know why? Because I went with a financial angle. I can tell you why. Because I went with a financial angle with our conversation, and our audience tend to come to us to talk more about business and mindset, and hear about growth and all these other things. And I was using you as an experiment, my man. I'm sorry.
Well, good. I'm glad, because now you have to have me back on. But the other side of that is you can go listen to it, because it was a lot of the very stuff that the listener would get if they gave it the chance. The angle might have been an angle, but the data and the quality of the conversation you and I had was really good. So ultimately, I just love talking to you. I love that you took the time. I love that we gave each other a little extra time today, because there's obvious connectivity here. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for being a part of the show. And you are a living proof of the high performance life. So follow Mark, find him, and DM him, please. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.